Good morning, everybody, or good evening, wherever you happen to be around the world. Welcome to this webinar. Funnily enough, I'm sitting here in a beautiful town of northern New South Wales called Southwest Rocks. And I'm sitting here waiting for my daughter to give birth. So it's a very opportune appointment, I would say, with us today, which is exciting. So what we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen so that we can start the presentation, and I'll just put it onto presentation mode if I can find that, and then we'll get started. All right, so I know a lot of you have tuned in from many places around the world, so welcome. And I hope my goal for you today is to find out why you may have problems with fertility and what you can do to fix those and sort them out, because I'm a firm believer that we can fix fertility and unexplained infertility. And unfortunately, a lot more people are being pushed into IVF when I think needlessly they are sent that way. And also there's way too many people having miscarriages. And I think we've got a great opportunity to stop that. Now you'll see a chat box. If you all open your chat box, if you have any questions, please put your questions into the Q&A, into the chat box. Emma's going to be posting links as we go. And we'll have plenty of time for question time. All right, so for those of you that don't know me, my name is Carolyn Ledowsky and I'm the founder of MTHFR Support Australia. It's quite an interesting story, and I'm a firm believer in lots of bloods, trying to understand what the blood work is telling us. And I sort of fell into MTHFR because a lot of people were having an elevation in their red cell count, in their folate. And I thought, why would this be? This is a strange phenomenon that I'm seeing. And I asked the laboratories, I asked doctors, I asked professors, and I said, well, what would be the significance of an elevation in a red cell count? And they said, oh, that's great news. They're obviously eating a lot of leafy green vegetables. And I knew this wasn't the case, but I could see a pattern that the people with this high folate, irrespective, they weren't taking any supplements, were those people that had a family history of multiple miscarriage, a family history of cardiovascular disease. And I thought, oh, something's wrong here. There's a problem. So I then discovered MTHFR when I was Googling madly and I was trying to work out why someone would have a high folate. I came across the gene MTHFR, and that's really how I got into this. Now, I guess my goal has been over the last 10 years is to really spread the word as far as fertility goes, because infertility is on the increase. So what we're going to talk about today is why people are being sent into IVF, why people are having more miscarriages, what MTHFR might be doing to your fertility, and why that is important, because we all know that folate is absolutely integral to the ability for us to fall pregnant and stay pregnant. And many pregnancies happen in the first 12 weeks. Some obviously happen later on, but most pregnancies fail, whether it's through IVF or through natural means, in those first 12 weeks. And I firmly believe that the lack of folate because of the MTHFR gene is integral to that reason. And so we're also going to talk about how we can minimize the risk of having failed IVF, because let's face it, if you've got MTHFR, and I think one of the biggest problems with IVF is more and more couples are pushed into IVF when there is a problem with fertility, but that's not really solving the problem. They're pumping you through full of hormones that aren't necessarily helping you, and then they wonder why there is only a less than 30% success rate. So when you consider the cost and you consider the amount of failures, so 60% of IVF procedures fail. It's not a great percentage. So my mission has been and will be for the next as many years as it takes to get the word out there, that irrespective of whether you have the MTHFR gene or not, before pregnancy, before preconception, before anything, you have got to ensure that you check to see if you have the MTHFR gene. It is absolutely imperative because it controls the amount of folate that you have in your body. So if we are going to reduce it, I want you to spread the word to anyone, any of your friends. If they are looking at fertility and they're trying to even think about it, the very first step has got to be, do I have the MTHFR gene? Because the chances are you will miscarry if your folate levels are low. If you've been diagnosed with unexplained infertility and therefore have been pushed through into IVF, well, just going into IVF is not necessarily going to help you. So what we need to do is optimize your folate to ensure that you have good quality DNA. And what's really interesting is a lot of these women who have unexplained infertility have all sorts of ovulatory problems, their cycle isn't regular, and if they don't have enough folate, that is not going to improve. So this is a really important component of getting the folate right, which then regulates your amount of good quality DNA to ensure that A, you fall pregnant, and B, you stay pregnant. And that's the key. So infertility rates are on the incline. We know that in the research. 15% of couples, which is 70 million couples, 140 million people are affected, and half of those go into IVF. Now, we're not saying that genetics is the only reason, but I believe the combination of MTHFR, which up to 60% of people have the MTHFR gene, the fact that we are giving couples this, I call it crappy folate because it isn't active, it isn't our natural folate. And you'll see in a little bit, I actually believe that this is having a negative impact on fertility. Plus the fact we've got men and women with mobile phones shoved in their pockets. We know that all the emitting frequencies is having a direct effect on the fertility of men. Sperm counts are going down. We've got people drinking out of plastic containers, buying foods in plastic, all these what we call fake estrogens in our environment are also affecting men's fertility. But the first step has got to be, do you have enough folate to ensure that you can fall pregnant? Now, 25% of all pregnancies end in a miscarriage. So 1 in 4 will fail, and 60% of all IVF fails. That's not a great success rate, is it? When we consider, and primarily the reason is, as I said before, you pump someone through full of fake hormones, it's not going to help it if at the end of the day, the quality of the DNA that you're using is not optimal. So we've got to turn these percentages around. And I don't want you to be, well, it would be great if you could actually stick into the chat box, what is the reason you're here? Have you had multiple miscarriages? Have you been pushed into IVF and have you failed? Because I think it's really important that you know that you are not alone. There are 70 million couples who are having problem with fertility. And most of the patients that I see from a fertility point of view have had multiple miscarriages, they've had multiple failed IVFs, and I can tell you that 80% of those will go on to fall pregnant naturally if you get things right and optimize your folate. Kristen, all right, so here is a classic example, and you are my typical patient, Kristen. 26 weeks. Is that 26 weeks and 9-week losses? Oh, a 26-week loss and a 9-week loss, no living children, and you're homozygous. Right, so you are 100% the best person for this information. This information is going to change your life because it can completely affect your ability to have those early losses. And the weight, the 26-week loss, which is very typical in homozygous, is probably because your homocysteine was elevated, and therefore the nutrients going through the placenta, they probably had some clots in it, and that's why you had the late pregnancy loss. So I firmly believe, Kristen, that we can turn this around for you, and you will not have, I'd like to touch wood to say, the chance of you having another failed pregnancy is minimized significantly. So let me tell you about a current patient of mine. She has had, unfortunately, a stillbirth about 18 months ago, and understandably, just completely traumatized by the whole experience. She's also homozygous C677T. We've worked for 6 months. We've optimized her folate. She's just fallen pregnant again. And I believe that if we make sure that we really focus on her clotting, make sure all the clotting genes and everything are good, then the chances of her having another incident like that are significantly reduced. Unexplained infertility, IVF for the first child, okay, and was taking methyl B complex, compound heterozygous. Okay, so, I think it's interesting because we certainly, with someone who's homozygous MTHFR or even compound heterozygous, you may need 10 times the amount of folate that you've been taking, and that's what no one understands. As far as Debbie's saying she miscarried and doctors won't look at any blood work, just push to IVF. Well, that's the classic, Debbie. That's what happens to most couples. Just push straight out and say, go to IVF. And that's really not the solution, because as Kristen's telling us, she had IVF and she still lost the baby. So unless you optimize, and I'm not saying don't go to IVF, but in my experience, most of the patients in your situation have not needed to go to IVF, because once they got their folate levels right, they fell pregnant, no problem, and they had really good pregnancies. And so I think, there's a lot of these things that we need to turn around. And Debbie, I hope that you have, I don't know if you're in Australia or the US, but Emma, would you please put up the links to the MTHFR testing for both our website here in Australia and the US? Emma will put it here in the chat box. So if you don't know if you have the MTHFR gene, I'd really like you to do that as your first step. So Debbie's in the US, so you need to go to our US site. You don't need any referrals. You just get the MTHFR gene test for you and your partner, because it's really important that you understand whether or not one or both of you have it. Jody had 2 miscarriages within 7 years of infertility. My doctor just barely tested for the MTHFR gene. I'm heterozygous and had a blighted ovum with a D&C at Christmas this year, with another miscarriage 4 years ago. G is nervous about miscarriage. She's 17 weeks and compound heterozygous, and B is so unwell that I cannot keep my supplements down. So that's really important. And I think, with Jody, even with heterozygous, you've got a 30% down regulation of your folate. The most important thing, Jody, is that you understand whether or not your partner also, because what you're going to see in the rest of this presentation is that even if your partner has one copy of the gene and you don't, you can miscarry. So it's not okay for just you to know. Your partner must know as well. So I'm going to continue on, but I'll come back to your questions in a minute, because I know we've got a lot to go through. And don't forget, we've got a really good Q&A at the end where I will answer more questions. And we've also got a bonus for you for those of you that stay till the end. I want to tell you about Jenny, and she's very typical of of a lot of you that have already told me what's happening with you. So Jenny was 36, had multiple miscarriages. They were usually before 12 weeks. They were mostly via IVF. So you see, IVF doesn't help you. If you've got a problem with your folate, going into IVF is not going to rescue you. She was on multiple formulas. She'd been to naturopaths, she'd been to specialists, she'd been to IVF clinics, you name it, she'd been there. And clearly it wasn't working. She was falling pregnant okay, but she just wasn't keeping the babies. Her husband was also on multiple formulas. And when she started with us, I just literally got the 64 formulas she was on, and I pushed them all to the side, and I said, all right, let's start with the basics and just do these 4, nothing else for now. We really focused on the diet. And so one of the things you need to understand is your diet is critical to the success, because that fake folate I'm talking about, you've got to take it out of your diet. You can't have it in there because it is going to affect your fertility. We worked on balancing the nutrients because there were a lot of things that were out of whack that I considered important for her to have a successful pregnancy. But the killer was, I put her on 10 times the amount of folate she was on. 10 times. She fell pregnant quite quickly, but unfortunately she'd had an IVF appointment, and you know, nowadays I'd say don't use old eggs, but she used old eggs and she used old sperm, and I had her on an autoimmune formula, but the doctors told her to stop everything, and unfortunately she miscarried. Secretly, I was actually quite pleased that she did, because I didn't want her going into IVF with old sperm and old eggs. So I was actually very relieved. We started again. I told her I was relieved, and she said, and so this is just that summary. She went with old eggs, and yeah, as I said, I was really quite relieved. So we started again, no old eggs. I said, let's just get 4 months of preconception under control. Under no circumstances was she to stop her autoimmune formula. And that's the other thing. A lot of people that do have MTHFR, particularly homozygous, do have problems with autoimmunity. So I gave her a special mix that stopped the body turning around and saying, oh, that's a foreign body, let's get rid of it. She fell pregnant, this time naturally, no IVF. Although she had an appointment for IVF, she didn't need it because she fell pregnant naturally. She had little Jack, there he is, the gorgeous little thing. Since then, she's gone on to have a daughter, no IVF, fell pregnant, no problem, had a beautiful pregnancy, and we've now got her ready to start trying for baby number 3. So, and she's now into her 40s, and I don't think she's going to have any problems. So this is good, and this is what she said. We would like to say a very special thank you for all of your guidance and support in helping us create a beautiful, healthy baby. Beyond that, you have helped us every day through improved well-being, and I had a dream pregnancy. We call the methylfolate our happy tablets. We admire your scientific approach that's specific to individuals and your passion for sharing and challenging the status quo. And what she means by challenging the status quo, many of you would realize if you knew that you had MTHFR and you go into IVF and you are considered to be high risk, the standard protocol is to give you 5 milligrams of folic acid. And that's what I call the crappy folate. And therefore, we really need to make sure that we're getting that out of your system. We don't go with folic acid. You've got to use the active. So we know that many of the fertility issues that people have are, just hormonal imbalances, typically a low progesterone, typically a high toxic estrogen. And so we need to clear that. We need to support that balance before we go into our preconception stage. And for the sake of 4 to 6 months, it is so, so worth it, because you don't want to have another miscarriage. You don't want to be forced into IVF, because it does not literally replicate what you can do naturally. But I think if you do need to go into IVF, we still want you to be in the great, beautiful nutritional state that we want you to be, both you and your partner, for that pregnancy, because your chances of having a successful IVF then are increased so dramatically, it's not funny. And we need a good, rich endometrium for implantation. So, there's a lot of things that we need to consider before we start trying, and we must not compromise in the time it takes us to get ready. So if any of you are thinking of falling pregnant right now, don't, because you need a minimum of 4 months to get this right. Okay, so really, really super important that you get this right. Okay, so we know that there are genes that affect the clearance of hormones. So, particularly when it comes to estrogen, that's super, super important. I'll go back. Lack of folate, well, that's typical, and that's what most of you would have the problem with. A lack of preparation. So as I said, we cannot compromise on the 4 months. Minimum is what you need is 4 months. And for the sake of that, the health of your baby, and we even know now that the epigenetic effect, that DNA, getting that right, can actually not only affect your baby, but your baby's baby. So 3 generations are being affected by the nutritional statement, nutritional level that you have going into pregnancy. And we obviously need to make sure that there's no toxic buildup or thyroid issues. So lack of folate, you would all know, affected by neural tube defects, the quality of the sperm, the quality of the egg, clotting disorders. It's even been linked with autism, ADD, ADHD, even allergies in children, and low birth weight. So we definitely need to make sure that we're getting good levels. Now, we've got, if you say then that, DNA is probably, creating good DNA is the most important, objective of folate in your body, right? If that's the one thing that we need, and when you've got a baby being, growing, you have the highest demand for DNA than you will ever have. And if we say that the DNA is largely governed by adequate folate, you can see how important the MTHFR gene is, because it regulates your active folate. So here's what is MTHFR, and some of you may not know. So MTHFR stands for methylene tetrahydrofolate reductase. This methylene tetrahydrofolate is just a very fancy word for active folate. And reductase means it's breaking it down to an active form. So it's important that your body has the ability to take the folate that you eat to convert it. And you'll see in this next one, here's folic acid at the top of your folate cycle. When you eat leafy green veggies, it comes in as dihydrofolate. And then your body has to convert it all the way down here to make 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate. And this is your active guy right here. But this is your MTHFR gene. So the problem is, if you're homozygous here, 70% of this active folate is not getting through the system. So folic acid that a lot of you are taking, and you'll know it because, all these prenatals on the supermarket shelves and in the pharmacies all still have folic acid, mostly. And therefore, we have a very important enzyme here called DHFR, dihydrofolate reductase. And it's responsible for taking this folic acid and converting it. But the problem is this enzyme does not cope with a lot of folic acid a day. The research says about 300 micrograms is the capacity. Now, if you are having a standard American diet or a standard Australian diet, which means you're having breakfast cereal fortified with folic acid, you're having sandwiches fortified with folic acid, because by law they have to be, you're having biscuits and cakes and packaged goods and all these protein powders and balls and everything else fortified with folic acid, the researchers guesstimate that we're probably getting about 1,000 micrograms a day. Now, this enzyme, unfortunately, only copes with 300 maximum. So what happens then if you're having 1,000? You're shutting down this pathway. So you can't take it and convert it to dihydrofolate or tetrahydrofolate. Doesn't work. So you can understand why you've got a problem. So if this is being shut down because of the amount of folic acid, and then you've got a 70% block, well, no wonder you're having problems with being able to get good levels of folate. So this is a very important concept that I want you to think about, is that the amount of folate and the form of folate is absolutely crucial. Now, you hear methylation a lot, the term methylation, and this is what we call a methyl group. And you can see there's a carbon surrounded by 3 hydrogens, and it's got an open arm. And the whole idea of these methyl groups is that they latch on to proteins and enzymes, and they basically activate them or turn them off. So DNA methylation needs that methyl to create good quality DNA. So if you don't have enough folate, which is the precursor to that methyl group, you're going to be deficient, and the quality of your DNA is not going to be what it should be. And here's some of the issues that we see on a regular basis with people who have a lack of methyls in their biochemistry. And you can see there's a lot to do with infertility, but there's also a lot to do with neurological disorders, multiple chemical sensitivities, headaches, anxiety, depression. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So it is important, irrespective, to have a good balance of methyl groups. Now, here's what I was saying to you before, and it's a really good illustration, because most people, and even most fertility specialists, would really focus on the female. But let's say here's dad, and he has 1 copy of MTHFR, and here's you, and you have 1 copy. The chance of your baby, your offspring, being homozygous is 25%. So 1 in 4 will have a chance of being homozygous. Now, and that means 2 copies. So they get the mutated copy from dad and mum, right? So 25%. Now, let's say we leave you as heterozygous, but we check dad again, but he's homozygous this time. All of a sudden, the baby has a chance of being 50% homozygous. And these are the babies, if you are taking folic acid or you're not taking the right amount of folate or the right dose of folate, these are the babies that miscarry. Now, if you take the folate and give you the right amount and the right dose and the right form, this risk goes away. That's what the research tells us. So it's pretty powerful that you know the status of your MTHFR gene and your partner's, because even, as I said before, if you have no MTHFR but your partner has, then the chances are you can miscarry. So if we look at it in response to female fertility, we know that, you know, having the MTHFR and elevation in homocysteine gives you lower ovarian reserve, a diminished response to follicular stimulation, because that's again another reason why IVF doesn't work, because you just don't have the response that they think you should. A reduced chance of live birth after IVF, and egg death. So you're not going to have the same response as someone whose folate levels are really good. And when we look at male, what we definitely know is that there's an effect with lower sperm count, higher DNA fragmentation, which means that the DNA is of poorer quality, reduced motility of the sperm. So if the sperm can't swim up that fallopian tube, then we're definitely not going to fall pregnant naturally, and they have a much higher chance of infertility. So it's important for both of you. And as I said, you know, it has been linked with autism, neural tube defects. Now, if we look at what the research says, because that's really important that we look and see, well, what does the research actually tell us? So this research published in 2015 said, the results of our meta-analysis indicate that maternal and paternal, so mum and dad's MTHFR, C677T and 1298C are associated with recurrent pregnancy loss. Now, as many of you said, you know, the response of your doctors and specialists, they sort of poo-poo MTHFR, but they're not reading the research. They're not looking at studies like this and says, hey, look at A1298C. There's a significant association with recurrent pregnancy loss, and yet most fertility specialists will say to you, MTHFR A1298C does not matter. And I'm telling you, it does. Look at this one, maternal supplemental folate intake and the risk of cleft lip and cleft palate. It says here, if you carry the C677T homozygous, you have an increased risk of cleft lip and cleft palate. Now, I was talking to a doctor that I know that does a lot of work up in northern Queensland, and she was talking to the hospitals, and many of the midwives have said, we see more cleft lip and cleft palate than we ever had before. My personal point of view is that the folic acid is one of the reasons. I don't think it's the total reason, but it is one of the reasons. This one, folic acid supplementation and MTHFR in relation to IVF outcome. High folic acid intake and MTHFR variations seem not to be associated with helping women to achieve pregnancy. Of course it doesn't, because they're using folic acid. So as I said in the very beginning, yes, folic acid, I believe, is your fake folate. It's not going to help you. And the standard protocol for high-risk couples is to give them 5 milligrams. So what's that doing? This one looked at MTHFR and the risk of recurrent spontaneous abortions, in other words, miscarriages. We noticed a high frequency of MTHFR associated with the paternal side, so that's dad's side, with recurrent pregnancy loss. I mean, the research is there. If you want to find it, the research is there. This one, MTHFR, 677T and A1298C associated with Down syndrome. Yes. And you know why? Because you are getting this aberrant DNA. And it's interesting that, you know, I think part of the reason that we're seeing the research, although you can see hundreds and hundreds of studies, the researchers still say that it's inconclusive. And there are many reasons for that. There are dietary reasons, you know, India and Pakistan and a lot of these countries where this research is coming out of, they're vegetarian and vegans, and they're not going to have enough B12 to help the absorption of their folate. So I think there's a lot of reasons why we see this. This one looked at ovarian follicular activity. And it said A1298C is associated with a higher FSH, and that's affecting folliculogenesis. In other words, creating follicles and the growth of the follicles. So definitely both polymorphisms are affecting it. And here's the typical example that I was talking to you. High dose folic acid alters human sperm methylation. These findings show that, contrary to expectations, high dose folic acid supplementation resulted in a loss of methylation in the sperm. They then go on to say that they believe that this is creating all sorts of neurological disturbances in the offspring as far as ADD, ADHD, mental health issues. So it is not necessarily the way we should be going. Just because we've always used folic acid doesn't mean that that's what we should be continuing to do. Here's another patient of mine, Catherine. She was into her 30s, well into her 30s, and was desperate for another child. But she was actually told by the IVF fertility place that she went to that there was less than a 2% chance of her falling pregnant, even with IVF. So we found out, A, that she had MTHFR. We worked to balance all the nutrients, and she was just, you know, desperate. So we went to, she actually said to me, look, I'm moving to the UK and I'm going to go into IVF when I get there. And I said, all right, do that. Ring me before, but take your time, just get yourself sorted. And we've been working for a good year and a half on her methylation, and she wasn't really ready up until then. Anyway, she rang me and she said, I'm pregnant. And I said, oh, I didn't realize you went into IVF. And she said, no, I didn't. I actually fell pregnant naturally. And she had another little girl. So it just goes to show, and irrespective of age, and I know that's a very controversial thing to say, but I do believe that irrespective of age, women can fall pregnant very successfully into their 30s and 40s if you optimize these folate levels. Anna, she came to see me. She didn't even know she had the MTHFR gene, but she did have significant thyroid issues, which we'd worked on, you know, for a year. She then got married and said to me, I want to really try and fall pregnant straight away. So we put her on a good sort of 4 to 6 month preconception because she wasn't in any hurry. And she came back and she said, guess what? I fell pregnant first go. And I said, what do you mean by first go? And she said, well, the great thing was we got married, we went on our honeymoon, and then literally a day after our honeymoon, well, she said I was on my ovulation stage on our honeymoon, which was very fortuitous. And she said, then my husband, who was in the army, went off on a tour, and I found out I was pregnant a couple of weeks later. So she said, I have no question that the lead in and that preconception stage really, really helped me. So what do we have to do to minimize your risk? Number one, you have to check that if you or your partner have MTHFR gene, if you don't already know that. If you've just done you've got to make sure that you do your partner. Know the form of folate that's right for you, and know the dose of folate that's right for you. Optimize the key nutrients that might be deficient, and make sure you're getting rid of that fake folate out of your diet. Obviously, there's many other nutrients that we need to consider that are either high or low. So that's really important that we do that. And so the things that I like you to know before you fall pregnant is, what is the MTHFR gene and what does it mean to you? So if you have a certain polymorphism, this is the amount of folate I'd like you to have. If your partner has a certain MTHFR polymorphism, this is the amount of folate he should have as well. I want you to really understand for yourself. I want you to be empowered to understand what is right and what is wrong in your blood tests. It is really, really important that you know that, because if you are empowered with this information, you know what is BS information and what is good information, and you have to know that. I want you to know what supplements to take and at what dose, and I want you to know what you've got to do for your diet, and I want you to know how to prepare your home. And that sounds like a crazy thing, but we've got in our course, we've actually got an amazing interview that I did with a colleague of mine, and she had 10 miscarriages before she realized that there was something in her home that was seriously affecting her. I want you to also understand environmentally what you have to avoid, what exercise to do, what, if any, fertility issues you may have, and when's the best time to start trying. And I know that's a crazy thing to say because everybody is so individual. And, you know, it's amazing how you all change slightly in your fertility window. So if you want to minimize your risk of miscarriage, you want to not necessarily go into IVF, or you want to have an improved success with IVF, then this is what I would like you to do next. So we have our fertility course, and we literally go through every single step of how to do everything that I just told you need to do. And it's so much better than me just seeing you and telling you what to do. For those of you that want to have an appointment with me, you can still do that, but you can only do it through the course, because I want you to be empowered to really understand what we are trying to do together. And this is teamwork. We've got to do it together. We've got to support each other, and we've got to understand way more information than we currently have. It's not just as simple as saying, I have MTHFR, I need to take X amount of folate. That's not what we're endeavoring to do. We've got to make sure that all the pieces in the jigsaw puzzle align and are perfect for you to fall pregnant and stay pregnant. It's such an important thing for you to do. Now, in the course, and Emma is going to put up a link for you in a little bit, we basically give you a step-by-step guide to go through absolutely everything I want you to understand. And the reason, as I said, that I want you to do the work, you need to be empowered to take control of this. And it's just such an amazing thing, and people within the course will tell you that when you get this and you understand it, there's no more fear. The fear is gone, and you are given this great empowered confidence to be able to say, yep, I know what I need to do to fall pregnant and stay pregnant. And this is part of the emotional support that you will get from doing this course. You've got a Facebook group of amazing women that are so incredibly supportive of each other. It is the most beautiful thing to watch. And you've probably all come in being very, I guess, very disillusioned, feeling unsupported, feeling like there's little hope that you will fall pregnant and fall pregnant naturally. But what I really want to leave you with today is this fantastic feeling of confidence, of support, of empowerment to know that you can do this. And I see it time and time and time again. And it's so beautiful, because you need to know that all of you that have had miscarriages and late-term births, you are not alone, because there are so many women like you that are in the same boat. And this is where you need the support. You need to know that you're not alone, and you need to know that you're not the only one that has been through this. Because what you've been through is really traumatic. There's no question about that. But I really want you to feel confidence and empowerment that where you're going from here is completely different. And that, I know that's a rah-rah thing to say, but it gets me so excited, because this is where everything stops and your lives turn around. And that's what we're all here to achieve. So all these blood tests that I know you're all going to ask me, what should you get and how should you get? The course actually takes you through everything. How to get the blood tests, where to get the blood tests. When you get the blood tests back, you say, well, I now know that I'm out of range for X, Y, and Z. And because I'm out of range, I know I need to take this amount of this and this. And every month we have a session that takes us through, and you can ask as many questions as you like. And throughout the course, you can talk to the other members, and they're very, very welcoming and very forthcoming in helping you. We have videos for absolutely every part of this, which is fantastic. And we've got great interviews. We've got wonderful, wonderful support people that will give you a lot of inspiration and a lot of, I guess, ancillary information to help you along your way. So the reason I have over a year wait list, and the reason I created this course is I felt so bad that, you know, people were waiting a year to try and get this information. And I don't want that. I want you to be able to start today, and I want you to be able to understand exactly what you need to do. If you still want to have access to me via appointments, you can. And when you get the link to the landing page of the course, you can actually buy the package that includes the appointments. But you may see that you're traveling on, really well, and you don't need that. And when you consider that IVF costs you 6 to 10 grand per session, and it takes on average couples 3 to 6 sessions for success, that's $60,000. I don't want you to spend that if you don't have to. I mean, sure, if at the end of it you decide to go into IVF, then awesome. But you will be well prepared, and the chances are your success rate will be improved exponentially. So I hope I wish you all the best in your journey, no matter what you decide to do. I hope that you will get the support you need. And even if you decide now or in 6 months' time that you are ready to do this, that's absolutely fine. But I know a lot of you have been through a tough time, and I just want to say that the support is here. The support is really important component of it, because I know that this is really lonely, desperate times, I guess, for many of you that are just trying to fall pregnant. So whatever we can do to help you and support you, that's really important. So take care, all of you. You will get this recording. So if you want to listen again, that's fantastic. And I wish you well on your journeys, and lots of love to all of you. I'm having trouble taking advantage of the option 2, and my line dropped just when Carolyn was addressing my question. Can someone from admin follow up with me now? Neve, could you please get, Rebecca, just post up your email address straight away so that we can make sure that, there you are. Neve, could you please take that, and anyone else who's having trouble, just quickly post up your email so Neve can help you out and make sure that that all happens for you in the next 15 minutes. Rebecca, don't worry, we will sort that out for you immediately. And anyone else having any problems, just quickly post up your email address now so Neve can take a copy and get you started straight away. All right, lots of love, all of you. Look forward to seeing you. Hopefully I'll see you inside the course. And, Mariska, Q&A question. 39. So this is anonymous. I'm 39 and been on infertility struggle for almost 18 years. Oh my goodness. You have C677T heterozygous, factor 5 homozygous. Okay, my husband has the MTHFR and factor 8. I have recurrent miscarriages around 5 weeks. If we address this problem with proper folate nutrition, what are my chances? Is it possible to have a healthy pregnant without taking drugs like heparin and low-dose aspirin? If you're homozygous for factor 5 Leiden, you probably do need to take maybe something like Clexane. We can do it naturally with things like low-dose aspirin is as effective as nattokinase. So we tend to use nattokinase in conjunction with the others. So I would definitely say your chances of recurrent miscarriage would be significantly reduced if you address this problem. Yes. Okay, SD is also having problems. Emma, I don't know why everyone is having a problem, can you please make sure that everybody, what is the problem that you're getting, SD? Just let us know why you can't log in. Forgot to mention, husband also has MTHFR heterozygous, okay? What folate levels are recommended for endometriosis? That's from Beck. Well, okay, so is it all finished now, Neve and back? All right, so Neve, please help everybody. Anyone that's having issues, will get Neve to help you out in the next half an hour. I'm going to put Neve's email address, so it's admin@mthfrsupport.com.au. If any of you have problems in the next half hour, immediately email Neve and we will make sure that you get this offer straight away. So that's SD is having the issues, and Rebecca. So please, Neve, get onto that straight away and make sure that everyone is okay. Endometriosis, that's a big question. You have to address the estrogen dominance first, Beck. You've got to be really careful with the folate you are taking, but we usually use a combination of folates, but only after we have reduced the toxic estrogen to good levels. Is there anything to help with scarring from IUD? Yes, we tend to use good high doses of serapeptidase, which helps clear, tubal scarring and all sorts of things. That's what we use. Anonymous, I'm a 43-year-old woman, woman, have miscarried twice after 6 cycles of IVF. I'm homozygous A129C and my husband is heterozygous. Yes, well, the same thing. You know, you are still all not probably taking the right amount of folate that you need, and you're not taking the right dose. So it's really important. Emma's put the link up again, and she's saying, please try again now. So let's try and get this up and running, Emma, straight away so that we can help everybody. Girls, let us know how you go with that while I'm answering these last questions. Yeah, I think that it's exactly the same problem. And 6 cycles of IVF, well, your typical 3 to 6 cycles is a problem. And you're homozygous, which means you've still got a 50% down regulation of your folate, and your husband has about a 30%. So you both have to be supported and optimize the folate levels. I would also very much like to see if you have any autoimmune conditions, and I think that's really important. Michelle Collins, is there a long wait list for the appointment to see you? No. If you purchase the course and the wait list, you'll get in immediately, because I only have appointments for the course people. I can't see any other people unless they've come through the course, because it's so important that you have that background information. You need to be able to work with this as well as when you see me. So what I normally ask you to do is finish module 3, get all your bloods and everything back, and that's when I like to see you for the first appointment. So you can be doing a lot of things in the background, and then we'll book an appointment for module 3. So if that takes you a week or 2 weeks to get module 3 done, then we'll have an appointment as soon as you've done that. Monica, my daughter is not trying to get pregnant, but she has PCOS and MTHFR. She has an appointment in April. Is the course for her? I definitely think so, because again, I don't know what her MTHFR is. PCOS, again, she's probably got estrogen problems. I find most of there is quite a link between PCOS and MTHFR. And so stabilizing hormones, making sure her hormones are functionally good, because without methylation, your hormones are all wacky. And so you have to be able to support every single level. And it's the reason why the course is so important, guys, is because you need to be knowing all the background stuff. So in our first appointment, which is an hour and a half, what I'm going to be looking at is your family history, where you've been, what you've done, how you've done it, what specialists you've seen, what you've tried, what your genetics are, and what we're going to start with first. I don't have time in that first appointment to be talking to you about, here's your diet, here's your home, here's this, here's that, this is what I want you to avoid, this is what I want you to test for. That's why I want you to have all that done when we do our first appointment, because it enables me to work quicker and faster and get you on track really, really quickly. Rebecca, awesome. Can't wait to meet you. So what I want you to do, get stuck into the course straight away. Start your level 1, 2, and 3. As soon as you finish level 3, I want you to get in touch with Neve, and we'll organise that appointment straight away to get you started. Look out for, join the Facebook group, because we'll post up when our next session is, and Neve, you might have that at your fingertips, so you know. I think it's coming up in a couple of weeks. And then that will get you started. We've also got lots of Facebook recordings, so if you want more information on a particular topic, you go into that, you listen to all the questions, you listen to all the answers, and that is awesome. All right, Rebecca, awesome work. I can't wait to work with you. It's exciting because I'm so passionate about this. I just want you all to fall pregnant beautifully straight away. But you need to give me the 4 months. It has to be 4 months. We have to sort out the things. And the thing with Monica and her daughter is she's got to sort out the PCOS first. She's got to sort out the reason she's getting the PCOS. And usually it is because the lack of folate is affecting her good hormones. So I think it's awesome that you're here and you're all asking these questions, because that's how you're going to improve your fertility. So look forward to seeing you. Hope I see a lot of you inside the course. Good luck for those of you that don't. And if you need any help down the track or you change your mind, just get in touch with us and we'll look forward to seeing you. Rebecca, look forward to seeing you too. Take care, everybody, and we'll send you this recording in the next 24 hours. Bye for now.